All right, joining us now to discuss all of tonight's breaking news, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders. Sarah, good to see you. Is the president have any reaction to Ocasio-Cortez, the Congresswoman's prediction that millennials think like we're like the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change? Any official White House position?
Look, I don't think we're going to listen to her on much of anything, particularly not on matters that we're going to leave into the hands of a much, much higher authority, and certainly not listen to the freshman congresswoman on when the world may end. We're focused on what's happening in the world right now. We wish that Democrats like herself would engage in that conversation, help us fix some of the current problems we know exist, and work with us to get some things done, particularly on the border, fixing the national and humanitarian crisis. That's the kind of stuff we're focused on, not things that we're going to leave up to the hands of something and someone much more powerful than any of us. All
right, let's go to the issue of the shutdown, where we are. The president made a proposal to the Democrats. By the way, they rejected it before it was even, or some of them rejected it before they even heard what was in it. But these are supposed to be things that the Democrats like: Dreamers, DACA kids, etc. On top of 4 or 5 years ago, all the Democrats were in favor of building the wall and sounded like the president, but yet they have been offered one invitation after another. They refuse to sit down. They send aides and surrogates instead of themselves sitting down. At this point, it seems like the president will have to just go it alone. Do you have any news about that on any front?
Look, Sean, I certainly hope the president has to go it alone. One thing I do know is that Republicans have been in lockstep with the president because we actually believe in getting something done. The fact that Democrats went out before the president even put his proposal forward on Saturday and rejected it shows us exactly where they are, and that is that they're not looking to solve problems, but they're simply looking to kick the can down the road, obstruct any progress being made, whether it's on this issue or probably anything else. We've seen no indication that Democrats want to work with the president to actually fix the problems facing this country. I think it's a sad day in America when Nancy Pelosi rejects an idea before she's even heard it. But unfortunately, I think that she's showing us exactly who she is, what her priorities are, and that's not the American people. The only person in this process and in this back and forth that is actually doing something to help the 800,000 federal workers, that's actually doing something to stop the opioid crisis, stop human trafficking, stop the national security crisis at our border is the president. Democrats claim to care about these people, claim to want to fix problems, yet they don't want to do anything about it. They want to ignore the problem and attack the president, and I think that is a very, very sad day, and I think it shows us what a leader is and what a leader isn't. The president's a leader, and Nancy Pelosi is nothing more than an obstructionist.
So let's go to the latest State of the Union address. Where are we there?
Nancy Pelosi invited the president. He accepted. She cited security concerns as a potential reason to delay that. The United States Secret Service and DHS have addressed those concerns, and we're moving forward until something changes on that front. Will the president consider other options if the House is not open to her? I don't know where you're going to be able to get at least 535 members of Congress and invited guests, you know, in Washington. I'm sure there's a place, but I just don't know where that is. I don't know if there would be a place that all of those members would attend, but the president's focus is on speaking to the American people. It's something he does every single day. Nobody does it better. And if Nancy Pelosi chooses to go in that direction, the president will continue to speak to the American people, and I'm sure he'll do that on that evening as well.
All right, let me ask you about what happened Friday with BuzzFeed. And if it's true, you had literally every major newspaper, every single network, so-called news channels, over 200 times go for if it's true and then spend hours after hour after hour saying impeachment without any verification on their own. Cheryl Atkinson has a list of 67 media mistakes in the Trump era, the definitive list. I printed out literally 47 small print pages of the Washington Examiner of mistakes the media has made in their reporting about the president in 1 year alone, and that would be 2017. his reaction to it, and does now the president's branding of fake news, is that forever etched into the minds of the American people when they see events like this on Friday and then followed by Covington and what happened to those students?
Honestly, Sean, we hope not. We hope fake news doesn't become the forever brand of the news media, because it's not good for the country. As the president said, he'd love for people to report things accurately. I think what happened with BuzzFeed is a great lesson for the media. Quit trying to be first and start trying to be right. We've seen time and time again where they run out there with these outrageous, ridiculous stories. One person reports it to begin with, and then they all jump on it. We saw it again with the Covington students. I've never seen people so happy to destroy a kid's life. When that becomes the norm in the media in America, simply because they're associated with this president, that is disgraceful, and that should never happen. Let's hope that this is a lesson to all of the media, to everyone. Let's focus on getting things right, not getting them first.
All right, Sarah, thank you so much for being with us.
Welcome back. President Trump doubles down on his demands for a border wall as he calls on Democrats to restart negotiations on funding the government past February 15th. A new number of House Democrats appear to be supporting the idea of at least a vote on wall funding. One of them joins me right now, Utah Democratic Congressman Ben McAdams. He's a member of the House Financial Services Committee and the Blue Dog Coalition. Congressman, it's nice to have you on the program this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Maria. Good to be with you.
So you were among 30 House Democrats who sent Nancy Pelosi a letter urging her to give Trump a vote on the wall funding. Tell me what you think would come out of that vote.
You know, first and foremost, what the purpose of that letter was to say that the shutdown is doing no good for anybody. We're harming the U.S. economy. We're risking a recession. We're harming the federal employees who are just working to put food on the table. And let's open the government. There are processes in the Congress, in our government, laid out by the founders to have debates like this. That's what Congress is intended to do. So let's open the government, and then let's have this negotiation. The president has a proposal that should be heard in the Congress. We should debate it. Then we should work to build common ground and try and move forward a solution on border security, on immigration reform, and let's go through the proper channels of the Congress that are built and intended to have this exact conversation. But let's not do it in the context of a shutdown that harms the American people, that harms our economy, and risks the pocketbooks of every American.
What I'm trying to better understand is really the makeup of the new Congress, because of course we know that there's a pocket of Democrats who just want the president out. And much of it is politics, and they are resisting anything that he would like. We know that Nancy Pelosi and many of her colleagues voted for a wall and voted for wall fencing years ago many times. We know that there's a wall right now, a border wall in Nancy Pelosi's own state of California, separating Tijuana and San Diego. But because President Trump has the idea, it's resist, resist, resist. So you come from a red state. You beat out your opponent on the Republican side. Do you think there's a movement within your new Congress to actually get things done, putting politics aside and not necessarily resisting everything the president says because you don't like his personality?
Absolutely. You know, there are a lot of me and my colleagues who were elected this last year. A lot of us are just pragmatists who just want to get something done. Before I was elected to Congress, I was a mayor. And mayors just have this attitude of, okay, what can we do to move forward, to solve the problem? As a Democrat in a very red state, I never got anything done unless I could reach out and build bridges across the aisle. So as long as the debate is focused on, you know, as long as we're defining a win is meaning somebody else loses, we're never going to have consensus. So we've got to find that win-win. And I don't know at this time what that win-win looks like, but we have to find it. And I know that a lot of my freshman colleagues are moderates who want to find that win-win. That probably we should look at some things to address immigration reform, and Dreamers, I think, is something important, permanent protections for Dreamers, but also border security. As a mayor, I saw illegal drugs and the impacts of that in my city, and I want to do more to stop the flow of illegal drugs into the country. So I think there's a lot of common ground, and I think the way to approach this, and the way that I would approach it if I was mayor, is to say, you know, there's a conversation, a debate about wall or no wall. Let's step back from that conversation where it's divisive, and let's talk about what we have in common. Let's find that thread of commonality amongst Republicans and Democrats. I think the thread of commonality is we all want to protect the border. We can find common ground on that. So in some places that's going to mean technology, other places, in other ways, immigration reform, and in some places it may mean a barrier. Right. And I think if we step back and reframe the conversation about protecting the border and what can we do and what's the most effective way to do that, instead of debating a wall or no wall, let's debate border security, and I think there's a lot of common ground.
Yeah, I think you make a lot of good points, because there are areas of the country where they're wide open, and perhaps maybe you don't need an actual fence or wall there, because you can use technology and drones. They're wide open areas that if illegals come in, you can actually apprehend them easily because it's so wide open. But then there are other areas, like the wall we've been looking at in Nancy Pelosi's state, separating Tijuana from San Diego, where you have a very dense population, 3 million people on one side of the wall in Tijuana, another 3 million people on the other side of the wall in San Diego. So what is your thoughts in terms of how much is needed for actual barrier on the southern border? And will you vote yes for wall creation and more wall extension of what we're seeing in this picture?
So what I've tried to do is not draw any lines in the sand. I want to vote to have border protection, to have border security, to reduce the flow of drugs and even illegal immigration.
But you said part of that may include a barrier.
Sure, I wouldn't rule out barriers in places where it's appropriate. I think that's acceptable. But let's have this conversation in the context of committee hearings at the Congress with the goal of finding common ground. I also think one of the things we can do to protect the border is to reduce illegal immigration by fixing a broken immigration system. If we can make sure that those good people who are just looking for a job, our economy is asking to bring in workers, let's make it easier for them to immigrate legally, so they're not tempted to cross the border illegally.
Sir, do you feel like
part of the border protection strategy has to be fixing a broken immigration system, our laws.
Do you feel that you have a voice? I mean, I know that you did not support Nancy Pelosi's bid to become the Speaker for a second time. Do you feel like you're being listened to? Will you have the influence with these practical ideas that you're putting forth?
I think so. I mean, we're just getting up and going as a Congress right now. I've been pleasantly surprised at people both on the Republican side and even more progressive on the Democratic side who I felt that my voice is welcome. Let's hope that as we go into this negotiation, people can allow all voices to be at the table. Some of the pragmatists can, on both sides of the aisle again, can really push for common ground and trying to find that solution that will really garner a majority of support in Congress and help us to reopen the border. Yeah. I'm somebody who, we're going to have disagreements from time to time, but once one disagreement's behind us, we move to the next issue. We try and find common ground, and we don't carry baggage forward from debate to debate. And that's how I'd go into this, is saying, look, we've got that behind us. Let's move forward and find common ground. There are other disagreements that are also radical on the economic side of things. You're on the Financial Services Committee. What are your thoughts on Elizabeth Warren's idea to confiscate income, to put a tax on overall assets and wealth, or Alexandria Ocasio's idea of having a 70% tax rate for the top earners? Well, I think I've jokingly said before, if people think that there are only two political parties in this country, watch the Financial Services Committee over the next several years. You're going to see a broad array of people across the political spectrum. You're going to see someone on the more progressive side, like Representative Ocasio-Cortez, myself, who's a moderate, a centrist that believes in the power of business and markets, properly regulated, of course, to make sure that there are protections for consumers and individuals. That the power of markets can really do a lot of good, and has done a lot of good in this country.
Will that force high earners to hide income where you won't get the revenue anyway? Will it change behavior in terms of philanthropy? What do you think that does to an economy if you see those kinds of tax rates, 70% and a tax on assets and wealth?
I'm not convinced that a 70% tax rate is the way to go. Anytime you have, tax policy drives behavior, and so that's not a direction I think we should go in as a country. We should look, what behavior are we trying to drive, and what is good for the American economy and good for the American people.
Congressman, you make a lot of good points. We so appreciate your time this morning. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Maria.
Congressman Ben McAdams there.